Oh, what's up everybody? I'm Matt Gary, and on this episode of Coding with the Force, I'm going to show you how to use wrapper classes to simplify your integrations in Apex. Alright guys, real quick before we go into the video. Now that there's over 1,000 of you, I have access to the community tab, which means that you guys have the ability to vote on every single video before I make it. So every Monday, starting this week, you are going to have the ability to vote on one of 3 topics for the video for next week. So if you want to have the video made that you care about the most, go vote now. All right, that's it. Let's get back to the video. All right, guys. So just like with every other video I do, I first want to explain why what I'm about to show you is so important and useful. So most of the integrations that you're going to end up doing are going to be with REST APIs. And REST APIs, 90% of the time probably, at least in my experience, typically return to you a JSON object. And what you do with that JSON object after it gets returned is important. I've seen people deal with that JSON object in a bunch of different ways. Unfortunately, I've seen people actually create real Salesforce objects to serialize them, deserialize them. I've seen people actually just manually parse the JSON, and some other things that I shouldn't even mention. So there is an easier way though, and it's most frequently referred to as a wrapper class. So what you can do is you can create these wrapper classes, or basically just an Apex class that is a representation of your JSON that gets returned to you. And you can use that wrapper class to deserialize the JSON and make it easier for your code to work with the returned response. So let me just give you an easy example. Reddit is an easy one to start with because you know it's not too complicated to deal with. If you want Reddit to return you some JSON for your favorite, subreddit or whatever, you can just append .json to it and, limit it as much as you want. If I only wanted one result, I can just say, just return me the hottest post in the Salesforce subreddit. So that's really all I'm doing here is I'm saying, for the Salesforce subreddit, hot posts, return me some JSON with a limit of 1. Obviously, a lot of integrations you'll have to authenticate first and do all that stuff. But the point of this video is not to go over integrations as a whole, but rather how to handle the return response that you get from them with a wrapper object. And you can do this, this kind of this exact same thing when you're doing the reverse. If you need to post something, you can create a wrapper object and use it to serialize your data to send out. So it's the exact same thing in reverse in that scenario. But let's stay on topic. You've retrieved this JSON response from Reddit in your code. What do you do with it at this point? It's pretty easy. You take an example of your JSON response. So you grab, an example of whatever JSON is going to get returned to you, ideally by calling out through something like Postman. So, a common way to test an integration before you build it and kind of get all of the data and information you need is to build a Postman, call out. So let me just show you that real quick because this is important. It's not always going to be as easy as putting in a URL like this. you'd open Postman, you'd go to new, create a new request. I'll call this Reddit request. And I'll create a new collection called Reddit. And save it there. And I'm just going to put in my URL. Well, not that one. I don't know how that one got copied in there. But I'll grab this one right here and put it in here and send it. And it will return exactly what I care about, which is my JSON that I was just looking at over here in the browser, but in a much nicer formatted way, right? Because it's pretty printing it is what it's called. It's super important that you leverage Postman to test your integrations before you actually build them. I will have a full-blown integration, I guess, series of videos here soon. But for the time being, just know that this tool is extraordinarily useful. It's free. It doesn't really cost you anything. And it'll allow you to test and bring back the data that you care about and bring it back in a way that is, very nice and easy to take a look at. So if I want to copy this response, I can just copy it to my clipboard. And the next tool that's super useful to use with integrations is this wonderful JSON to Apex Heroku app that somebody made, and it makes lives a lot easier. But there's a couple things that we'll go over that you need to know, after we generate this class. So you'll take the JSON, either from here or from Postman or something like Postman, and you'll copy it into this JSON to Apex Heroku app. And then you'll want to name the class whatever it is. So we'll call this Salesforce Reddit. No, we'll just call it Salesforce Reddit. Could probably just call it Reddit Hot Post to make it easier, but it is what it is. And as long as nothing is wrong with your JSON that you've pasted in here, which in all likelihood will not be, especially if you use Postman, you will get a class generated for you. And if I open this up, I'll pull it over in IntelliJ since it wants to default there. You're going to get something like this. And this is a lot, right? In all honesty, I don't care about 90% of what's in this class. Maybe I just want the name of the post and the URL. If that's the case, I don't need 90% of this class. So I'll show you what I mean. The wrapper class that you make does not have to be a perfect representation of all of the JSON response you get. It just has to represent enough of it to be able to get the data out of it that you need to get out of it. So let me show you what I mean. I'm going to copy this code because we are working in Visual Studio Code at the moment. And we will create an Apex class, and I will call this, I'm going to change the name. Actually, I'll keep it simple. We'll just keep it at Salesforce Reddit. Whoa. And put it in there. Okay. Then we'll copy in the class that was auto-generated for us by the JSON to Apex Heroku app. Okay, now, I know what I personally want, and I've taken some time to kind of go through this in the past. So let me just show you kind of what I mean by you don't need the entirety of the JSON if represented as a wrapper class if you only want to bring back a handful of things from the wrapper class. So there's tons of stuff in here, and by all means you might want all of it. But for me, I just want the name of the post the hot post, that gets pulled in, and I want the URL for it. So what I care about are actually somewhere down here, unfortunately. Here are my two like class variables. I'm not sure why, but often this JSON to Apex class generates those like in the middle of the class for some reason. They are probably your most important variables, and I will explain it in a second. So I need these two for sure. The class level variables, or the class variables, are typically pretty important. I need this data one in particular. I don't actually need this kind variable because I don't care about the kind personally. I don't need this link flare because I'm not going to be dealing with link flares at all. You can see that this public, this class variable here is a type of data Z. So data Z is representing the top level of our, basically, of our JSON. So if we go back here, basically what it's representing is this data, right? Let me blow this up a little bit and see if I can zoom in. So you can see we had two variables at our top, in our class that were at the top. One was called kind, which I deleted because I don't care about it and I'm not going to use that at all. And the other was data, and the data was really the, all the other information that we care about, all the super important stuff. So we want to rename this number one. Data Z is not super helpful. It's not very informative of what we're actually dealing with. So we'll call this post, and we'll change the class name to post. And we can leave that as data for the moment. Now, within the post, you can see there's a lot of information, within the data, which I've renamed post, there's a lot of information. I don't particularly care about the mod hash or the dist, or honestly, in our case at the moment, the before and the after. I really just care about the children, which is honestly where all the data is. So you can kind of see that the children represents this array, right? This array right here within the data. So all I really care about, I don't care about this mod hash that's not returning me really anything that I care about. I don't care about this dist, which in all honesty, I don't know what it even represents, but I do care about the information within this children array that Reddit returns to me, right? There's a lot of really useful stuff within the children array that I'm going to care about. So, and I'm just going to bring this up one more time so you guys can see it, but here's data, so our post object now. I don't care about mod hash, don't care about distribution, do care about children and all the data within it. So that's why our post class is just going to represent our children, right? Our children array that we're just taking a look at. So now let's go down and find the children class, which is down here. And again, there is a data class, because if you can see here, within the children array, there is data, and there is, there's also a kind. Again, I don't care about the kind, so I'm going to remove it. Doesn't matter to me. Now I'm going to go take a look at the data class. The data class, I am pretty positive, is this massive, gigantic thing. And yet again, I don't care about 90% of the stuff in here. So I don't care about whether it was approved. I don't particularly care about the subreddit at the moment, self-text, all that stuff. I do care about the author name. Don't care about, let's see, pretty much all this stuff. I do care about the name of the post, so I'll keep that guy around. Don't know what most of this means. You know, you might care about upvote ratio. I don't right now. Lots of stuff in here, right, that is just a lot of junk that I don't need to care about. So I'm just going to keep deleting things until we get down to what we actually care about. And so much junk. And that's another thing I see a lot, is that people don't understand that you don't actually need all of this, right? You just really need what you care about, because it's going to allow you to you know, do what you want to do. Or it's I'm rambling while I'm trying to figure out what I care about. It's going to allow you to deserialize your JSON object, even if you don't have absolutely everything. You know, it's not important that you have your entire JSON object represented, which I know I've said several times, but I just kind of want to hit that point home. Okay, so now we have all the data that I care about. I have the URL of the Reddit post, I have the name of the Reddit post, and I have the full name of the author. That's it. That's all I care about. The rest of this stuff I can delete because I deleted its representation within the data. So preview, images, all awards, gildings, all this stuff can just disappear because I don't care about it. You might care about it if you're doing this integration yourself, but I don't right now. And I'm just trying to prove to you that you can integrate with these places without having all of your JSON, all of the massive amounts of JSON that you'll get returned to you represented within your wrapper class. Okay, so now we have exactly what I care about for the JSON that gets returned to me by Reddit. So I am going to save this. And there's actually one other important thing that I want to talk about when you make these wrapper classes. If you intend to, you know, access this data in an Aura component or a Lightning Web component, you need to put @Aura enabled on top of the things that you intend to. Wow, why does it want to do that? @Aura enabled on top of the variables that you're going to be potentially accessing. So if I'm going to iterate through everything for every single variable I care about, I'm going to put @Aura enabled on it. Otherwise, you'll pull this into your Lightning Web component or whatever, and you'll be like, where's all my data? I can't see it. It's kind of confusing, a little bit frustrating, but that's really all you have to do. Slap Aura enabled on top of your variables, and then they'll be visible to your Aura components or your Lightning Web components. All right, so we got that set up. Now let's do the actual integration part and prove that this works. So we're going to create another Apex class, and we'll call it, I don't know. Again, we'll just say Reddit post retriever. Cool. And we're going to get our, we'll just make a class that says public static. We'll return a list of Salesforce Reddit dot children, and I think that's it, right? Just want to make sure here. So yeah, that'll be what we return. So Salesforce Reddit is our class. Within here we have inner classes, so I have to say, if I want to return the children object, a list of the children basically, then I need to basically have a dot operator to do that, Salesforce Reddit dot children, right? Because I'm accessing an inner class of this outer class. So Salesforce Reddit children, and we'll say get Reddit data, something like that, right? And then the next thing we need to do is actually make the call out to Reddit, which is pretty simple. I'm not going to go deep into the mechanics of this because this is not exactly the point of this in particular video, but it is an important thing. So we'll say, well, first we'll create our list so it'll stop complaining about things. So Salesforce Reddit children Reddit posts equals new Salesforce Reddit children, right? Cool. And eventually we're going to return Reddit posts, no matter what. That's going to bother me though. Okay. And the next thing we'll do is actually make the call out. So let's get to it. We're going to create an HTTP instance. We'll make this the call out equal to new. And the next thing we'll do is actually make the request. HTTP request equals new HTTP request. Again, this is all just standard stuff if you're ever going to do an integration in Apex. And we'll say REST set endpoint. And I almost always do this for my endpoints. If I'm not, okay, let me be super clear. If you haven't watched it, I have a very important video going over how to use named credentials in integrations. I'm not going to use them here just because this is an extraordinarily simple example. But if you're doing an integration in Apex, use a named credential. I have a video going over everything you need to know about it. Please use that. Don't do what I'm about to do right now. But, if I was doing this, I always make my strings private. In this case, I'll need to make them static final strings, and I'll call this Reddit URL, not Aura enabled. This guy. Cool. And that's also going to bother me. Okay. So there we go. We'll put the endpoint in there. Endpoint is literally just the URL that you're going to call to. Also, if you're following along with this tutorial and you get errors, it's because you will have to set this up in your remote site settings. So let me just show you what that is real quick so nobody gets super confused about that and lost on this tutorial. If you've never set up a remote site setting, pretty simple. You'll just log into your Salesforce org, go to remote site settings and setup, obviously. And you are just going to put in Reddit's URL. That's it. Now you can call out to Reddit. If you don't do that, this is going to break. It's going to say you need to put this in remote site settings, and you might get confused. So anyway, let's continue onward. I'm going to make one more private static final string, and we'll name it get, and it's literally just going to represent the get method. So set method, and that'll be get. Okay, so if you didn't know, when you call out to different, endpoints, you typically tell them what method. Do you want to get data? Do you want to post data, send them data, put data, patch data, among other things. It's important you know what you want to do when you're calling out to those endpoints, because it's going to, it's pretty important. You're not going to get the job done without it. So the next thing that we're going to do is actually call out to our endpoint. So we're going to make an instance of the HTTP response class and use our HTTP callout, or our HTTP instance, to actually send our request. So our request is call to this Reddit URL using a get method and give me some data, hopefully. Now, what do we do next? There's one portion of this that I haven't talked about yet, and we're going to get to it in just a second. When these JSON to Apex classes get generated, there's one very important method near the bottom that you don't really want to change typically, and it is the parse method. Basically, it's going to take your JSON, your JSON string that gets returned to you by your endpoint, and it's going to actually deserialize it using Salesforce's internal, JSON deserialize method. So it's going to take the JSON and it's going to use an instance of this class that we are literally in right now, called the Salesforce Reddit class, to deserialize your JSON. So, right. So we've got our Reddit response. So the next thing that we're going to do is say, what did I name this class? Salesforce Reddit is equal to Reddit response, or actually, sorry, what am I? I just got lost here. One sec. No, I'm right. Salesforce Reddit. I'm too deep into this video to change it now. It is what it is, guys. You're gonna have to deal with me messing up every once in a while. Reddit posts. I think I already have that, so we'll say Reddit post response, because I'm running out of variable ideas without thinking too hard. And then we'll say Salesforce Reddit dot parse and send it our HTTP response that we named Reddit responses body. Cool. So I know that this is a little confusing, but basically what's happening is we're saying, okay, we just called out to Reddit, and Reddit hopefully gave us a response. And we're going to take that response's body. So the body of the response is typically where the JSON exists. And we're going to parse it using our Salesforce Reddit class's parsing method, right? The one that we just went over down here. That's what we're calling. And that parse is going to use, like I said before, the deserialization method to give us an instance now of our Salesforce Reddit class. Much easier to deal with than, getting this massive, gigantic response and having to parse through it manually or something like a crazy kid. I've done it before. The only reason I know all this stuff is because I've effed up so many times that here we are, right? Okay. The next thing that we need to do however, is get the actual children, because that's what we care about. We care about the children, which are the equivalent of the actual individual posts, right? And this is super easy to do, thankfully. So we are going to, I think I'm actually returning the wrong thing. We'll get to it in just a moment. We're going to say Reddit posts. So this one that we set up here, we're going to say Reddit posts is equal to the Reddit post response dot data. And no, almost there. Dot children. Okay, so let me walk you through this. We need to grab this list of children, because in the JSON, the children, the children array is where all of the important garbage exists. Okay, so we need this array. Let's go back through what that looks like. Okay, so if you can remember way back here, right, okay, we're grabbing the data and the children, in that data. So if we come back here and, just take a look at what that means. Up here, the top level, we've got this data variable that represents an individual's, Reddit post. Basically, yeah, it represents a data or a Reddit post. And then within the Reddit post, we have that children array that we saw in the JSON, right? So this guy, we've got an array of children. That is how we're, accessing this basically. This post object has an array of children in it. Cool. So that's how we were able to access this here. And I'm just realizing I am actually returning the wrong thing up here. I actually want to return a list of data to make this easier later. So we're going to return data, because these are the actual true individual post data information that we care about. I'm going to do this. List Salesforce Reddit dot data. Same thing over here. Okay, so we got our children. Okay, and we're gonna have to run through all of our children or all of our posts to get an array of data that we actually care about and want to return. Okay, cool. So what we're going to do is we're just going to make a for loop to go through that. And we'll say Salesforce Reddit dot children child, we'll just call it that, and have it loop through our Reddit posts that we created, right up here. All right, so when we're in here, it's going to be pretty easy at this point. We're just going to say Reddit data dot add, and we're going to add the child dot data, and the child dot data, again, coming back here. Our children is a list, this children variable that we're accessing is of type children, which is represented here, and that has, a data object representation in it. So that data is what we're grabbing, right? This class is got the information in it that we're grabbing. And so we're just looping through our child posts and grabbing the relevant data and putting it into this array that we're going to return. Okay, so as you can kind of see here, this is a whole lot easier than what you might have seen done in the past. And there's a number of other ways that you can achieve this. You know, this is not always going to be a cut and dry scenario like we have right here. There's also other ways to deserialize JSON. That this video isn't really here to go over, but you know, most of the time you're going to be able to use a wrapper class like this. If you didn't use a wrapper class, what you would do is grab this body and literally just like use a regular string parser to parse out what you care about. Which, if you didn't know, string parsing has an enormous overhead typically, and is not really what you want to do. It's going to slow down whatever code you're making. But you know, you can see now that we've got a wrapper class, right? We have these nice objects that we can work with to loop through things easily, to grab data that we want. And let me just show you that this is working, you know, really easy. So we'll just say system.debug child, or actually we'll loop through the Reddit data and show that it's working to make it a little easier. So we'll say for Salesforce Reddit dot data and we'll just do a system.debug data dot author full name, and we'll just do the same thing over and over here just to see what gets output for us. Data dot name, data dot URL. Okay, and we will run this code in the execute anonymous window and see what we get. So we'll come down here and create an Apex script. We'll get a new file that says Reddit callout.apex, and we are just going to call the Reddit post retrievers get Reddit data. Cool. Make sure I spelled it right. Looks good. And if we call that, it should run, and we should, oh, invalid HTTP method get, oh right, that's this should be capitalized. Cool. All right, and hopefully this works, so we'll see. Maybe. Yeah, okay, cool. It worked. These are this is not exactly what I wanted returned, right? I was expecting more of like for the name and the URL. Author full name. I was expecting more of like an actual author full name and an actual name, but you can see at least I got the right thing returned to me for the URL. And you can also see that the code is, you know, it's running and operating and working. I now know that the author full name is not what I expect, and I suspect if I went over here and typed in author full name, I would easily see that, right? And I guess I wanted title for the name of the post instead of name. And Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there is a good author thing. Let's see. There we go. There is one. I guess it's just regular author. So we'll just grab those really quick because, you know, why not? Just to prove that this will still work. Author and title. And then we'll go over here. I'll actually save this first. Or, you know, I could just be a complete idiot here and get this all wrong. Author, title, save it one more time. Go back over to the Reddit post retriever. Change this to author. Change this to title. And after we save it, we will run our execute anonymous again, and hopefully we'll get what we want. So if we go down here, we can now see that we got the right things. We got our URL, we got our Spring 21 release notes, the actual title, and the author, good old Winyo, the guy who started the SFXD Salesforce Discord server. That's pretty cool. And we can just double check, you know, that the URL works and that we are, yeah, open it, my guy. We're getting where we want. That's good. And we can even check, you know, is this the hottest post on Reddit right now? And it indeed is the hottest post on Reddit. So our code is working. We're pulling what we want. And that's great, right? Cool. And that is really mostly it. Now, hopefully, this all makes sense. I know that it's kind of confusing, but as you can see, you're kind of really just making a representation of the JSON, right? That's really it. There's not much more to it than that. You're just making a class representation of the JSON, and more specifically, just the JSON that you care about. Don't make a huge class that represents all of the available JSON if you're only going to grab 3 or 4 things out of it, right? That would just be silly. And also, please, you know, if you're doing Lightning Web Components and stuff, don't forget to put this OR enabled in here, or you're going to be very confused why you're seeing empty strings returned to you for no reason. And that is really it, guys. I will post some documentation to this JSON deserial, or JSON class in general, because there are instances where this deserialized method doesn't work, and you have to do untyped JSON deserialization among other methods. So yeah, I'll put some documentation in the description of the video for that. And yeah, but otherwise, that's it. Pretty simple, not super complicated, but a really useful thing that's going to save you an enormous amount of time and an enormous amount of code and an enormous amount of what people call them clock cycles. We'll just call them time for your code to execute. You're going to cut down a lot, especially if you're doing parsing or something crazy before. That's it. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe. If you didn't know, now that I can, I make it so that you guys can vote on topics every single week. So on Mondays, you're going to have the ability to vote on what you want to see me make for the upcoming week's video. So don't miss out. Go vote on them. And that way we all get to see what we want to see. And I'm not just making videos for fun and games. It is fun for me, so I can't complain. All right, guys. That's all. I'll see you next time. If you watched this far, Thank you, and see you later.